I remember I found this Facebook group. It was a Facebook support group for copper IUD toxicity. So I start reading everyone's post, and it was like crazy symptoms, like heart palpitations and like crippling anxiety, like I mentioned, and all these wild symptoms. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, I don't really have any of that, but...
Welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. I'm your host, Lee Brandon. This work started for me several decades ago when I started to see the impact I could make on people, helping them to identify the root cause of their health problems that no doctor could figure out, including serious back, knee, shoulder and neck injuries, acne and eczema issues, severe gut health problems, even helping couples get pregnant after several IVF treatments had failed. And it really moves me to be able to help people in this way. And that is why I do what I do and why we have this show. Welcome to this week's episode where we dive deep into the world of gut health and hormones with our special guest, Avery Leigh, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner whose own personal health struggles inspired her to take a closer look at the root causes of chronic gut issues and hormone imbalances. Through advanced lab testing, customized protocols, and nutrition coaching, she guides her clients on a journey towards better health and balance. Join us as Avery shares her story of overcoming PCOS, hypothyroidism, and copper toxicity, and how she discovered the importance of addressing the underlying causes of health issues. If you're ready to take control of your gut health and hormones, this episode is a must listen. Stay tuned as Avery shares her insights, tools, and practices for achieving lasting wellness and achieving optimal health. Avery Leigh, welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be speaking with you today. And to kick things off, could you perhaps share your journey and the health challenges that you've been through in your life and what led you to studying functional diagnostic nutrition?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Avery Leigh. I had struggled with gut issues and eventually hormone imbalances and all that, all the way from when I was like 7 years old. Would skip school all the time and I didn't know what was going on. And so living in America, I went down the traditional medical system route, and I had taken at least 10 antibiotics by the age of 12. And so over time, I realized that it was really just a symptom treating model and I wasn't actually seeing results long term. And so I became really, really interested in holistic health and all these natural remedies that I found from podcasts, from research. And I kind of did my own digging. I'm very analytical, so I want to know the why behind everything. So that led me to working with a naturopath. I started getting functional labs done and realizing that I had all these imbalances going on in my gut. And I started to connect the dots as to why I'd been having these issues for so long. Things like leaky gut, candida, H. pylori. And then eventually I was on oral birth control, and then I switched to the copper IUD. And when I got the copper IUD removed, I crashed. Like my body had already taken so much, and that was like the end trigger where I wasn't able to detox properly. My hair started falling out. I had crippling anxiety, dissociation, all these crazy symptoms that I had never experienced before, on top of the gut issues, irregular painful periods, all these things that had kind of been building. And so I had seen that naturopath, I had seen another naturopath, and although I was seeing slight improvements, it was like really, really hard to function on a daily basis. And so that led me to discover the FDN program, Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. And I was like, you know what? I was working in finance at the time, so I don't even come from a health background, but I've always been very passionate about it. And I decided to just go all in. And it's been the most incredible journey. While I was going through that program, I was running the lab tests on myself, connecting the dots further, which we'll get into this, of course, but realizing that I had so many other issues with my liver and just my nervous system being dysregulated without even realizing it. And so I've kind of created my own system that's helped me heal. And I've built a practice around that. And now I help women with gut and hormone issues, energy, autoimmune, all of these things as well.
Awesome. So you mentioned some of the symptoms that you had, and you mentioned gut symptoms. Are you willing to share specifically what kind of gut symptoms you
Oh yeah.
had?
Yes, I'm an open book. So from an early age, I remember uh like my bowel movements have always been irregular. I would go like once a week, maybe. And
Wow.
I had been to like a gastroenterologist when I was like 12. I had like an endoscopy where they put you under and test for like lactose intolerance and ulcers and all these things. And they were like, oh, you're normal. It's just stress. And to a 12-year-old, that was pretty happy. Like, I wouldn't say I had like a traumatic childhood or anything. I didn't really know what to do from there. And so I remember like I would eat foods that I knew would hurt my stomach, and it was kind of random, but like spicy foods or foods that were high in gluten. At the time was I was really sensitive to, and so I would eat those foods just so that I could give myself a bowel movement because I was so uncomfortable, even though it would cause a lot of inflammation and pain. And so, and then later, in college and all of that, I started to have a lot more issues with my sinuses. So I had strep throat a bunch of times. I had chronic sinusitis, sinus infections, which led to even more antibiotics, and just feeling like very inflamed, lots of bloating, gas, like just like very uncomfortable feeling. And I was like, how can all the people around me be able to eat whatever they want? And they're fine. And then there's me that's always like, oh, I have the stomach issues, or oh, I have to make sure I look at the menu at a restaurant before I go out with my friends, or else it's gonna mess me up. So yeah.
Sounds like you had pretty rough ride.
Yes, for sure.
So one of the things you mentioned was the copper IUD, and that caused some severe symptoms. Can you talk more about your experience with that and also other forms of birth control?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I went on the pill when I was 16 for acne. And I remember like my doctor, my OB told me, "Oh, you can skip the last week and then it'll just go straight to the next one and you don't have to have a period. It's fine." So I did that for like 5 years. I didn't have a period. I thought it was great. I was like, this is the best thing ever. I don't have to worry about getting pregnant. My acne is more cleared than normal. I still had gut symptoms, but I didn't make any connection to the birth control with my gut at the time. And so, yeah, I stayed on that. And then as I started to go more down the gut healing journey, I was like, all right, I want a more natural approach. I'm going to try to get off this medication and prescription. So I stopped taking that cold turkey. And then a few months later, I got on the copper IUD. And when I got off the birth control, I wasn't like the first one. I wasn't as in tune with my body as I am now. So the only like symptom that I really remember is I started breaking out like all over my body. Like I had acne on my back that was pretty bad, my chest. And then, yeah. And so then I got the copper IUD and I had really, really heavy, painful periods, like bent over in pain, having to rely on ibuprofen at least a few times a month. And so I knew going into getting the copper IUD then that's a common side effect. And so I was like, you know what? It's worth it. I don't have to stress. Um, and so I put up with that for a few years. And then I had gone a little bit deeper down the functional medicine route. And I had a friend who she was already in the health world. She was a health coach. And she was like, hey, the copper IUD, like there's been a lot of things around that. Like I just kind of planting that seed. And so I remember I found this Facebook group. It was a Facebook support group for copper IUD toxicity. So I start reading everyone's post, and it was like crazy symptoms, like heart palpitations and like crippling anxiety, like I mentioned, and all these wild symptoms. And I was like, that's interesting. Like I don't really have any of that, but my hair is falling out and my thyroid is low and all these things, these other small things were happening. And so I was like, you know what? I remember asking, I asked the universe, I was like, show me a sign if I need to get my copper IUD out. And like literally 3 minutes later, I saw like all these numbers in a sequence and I was like, all right, I'm getting it out. So the next week, made an appointment, got it removed. And what is crazy about the copper IUD is I felt amazing for like 3 or 4 weeks after. And I'd already cut out all these inflammatory foods. I was doing this like 30-day cleanse. I was going to cold plunges and breath work and weightlifting and all these things combined. And it wasn't until like a month after I got the copper IUD removed that I crashed. Like it was kind of sudden, where I started experiencing like really, really intense brain fog, and like I couldn't think clearly. And I felt like it was what I describe it now as like dark night of the soul, spiritual awakening. Like it was crazy. My thoughts were very existential. I was like, I could like feel other people's energy. Like it was really weird. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. So I was trying to figure it out. And meanwhile, my naturopath that I was seeing didn't really know what copper toxicity was. And I was like, here, there's thousands of people in this Facebook group that are going through all of these things. Like clearly there's a connection there. And they're like, nah. And so, months later, doing my own research, listening to tons of podcasts. By then, I had started my. I have a lot of clients through Instagram, so I was sharing a lot about my journey there, and people were reaching out and being like, "Oh, I had the same experience, and after I got the IUD removed, I had the same thing, but then, I felt better after like years later." And so I put two and two together with where my hormones were at. And then we can talk about this more, of course, but people think the copper IUD is not hormonal, but it affects your hormones because copper can increase estrogen. And anytime you're putting a foreign object in your body for a long period of time, it's going to cause a lot of inflammation, especially in the womb area, which is very sensitive. And so that's, I think, a lot of where my issues were stemming from, but also knowing that it's not just one thing, right? Like it's never just one thing. And that's why people think like, oh, I got my IUD out and I'm fine. And then you have someone like me that got their copper IUD out and all these other issues started coming to the surface. And it became this like thing that I couldn't ignore anymore. And so a lot of that had to do with the amount of toxins I had built up in my body, parasites. I think I was also living in mold at that time. So like I said, everything was compounded together.
Mm. Yeah, I find it just astonishing. So I work with people with acne, and it almost seems like, if a female goes to their medical doctor with acne, the first thing they do, but straight on birth control.
Yep.
There's never, okay, so let's have a look at what you're eating. How much stress are you under? What time do you go to bed at night? How much water do you drink? Do you drink alcohol? Do you smoke cigarettes? Right? It's just like, oh, here you go. This will do the job. And I don't want to bash people, but most of society look at medical doctors and think, wow, look at, these are really intelligent people, right? They're certainly good at memorizing stuff and passing exams. But when you're starting to put an exogenous hormone into the body, what do you think that's going to do to the feedback systems of the body? Right? The body works on checks and balances. And if there's too much of a hormone in the body, what's the body going to do? It's going to shut it down. Right? Yep. It's going to shut down its own natural production of the same hormone. But this is a synthetic hormone. This isn't a natural hormone. And, when I've looked into the side effects of these birth control pills, breast cancer, cervical cancer, endometriosis, breast tenderness, like all these things are probably worse than acne. I mean, acne is bad enough. I should know. I had it for 18 years, right? Yeah. But ask anyone, would they rather have acne or cancer? I think almost everyone's going to pick acne, right?
Yeah.
And it's just astonishing to me. And then, what I see is the other end. People come off the contraceptive pill, and like you experienced yourself, because I was going to ask you that question, what happened when you stopped taking it? Massive breakout. Well, why? Because now the body's not got that feedback mechanism saying you don't need to produce these hormones. So all of a sudden there's this flood of hormones suddenly being produced, and wow, no wonder you're going to break out.
Yeah.
So I'm just flabbergasted by what's the right word, but still being polite, ignorance,
yep.
Ignorance of medical doctors. And I know they're limited for time, and I know they're working within a system, and if they go outside of the system, they get their license taken away. I get that. So it's not necessarily easy, but I couldn't sleep at night if that's what I was doing to people.
I know. It's crazy. And I think and I've gone back to an OB because I am not a doctor. And I always encourage my clients to have a team of doctors and practitioners that they trust. And so I get my yearly pap smear and I get my checkups and all that. And I went back to my OB last year and I was like, I mean, I'm not ever planning to take birth control ever again, but I asked her, I was like, so what do you think of the copper IUD? Because this was a different OB than the one that I used it with. And she said, it's hit or miss. Like, I think for some people it's great and for others it's not. And I was like, well, just to let you know. And I kind of went into my story a little bit and she goes, oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And then she just kind of brushed past it. And I think there's also this divide with, we don't have to get into all of this, but the socioeconomic status of people and their access to these things. And it does take, an investment to learn how to track your fertility naturally and do these things. And it's also it's a level of responsibility that you have to have in order to be consistent with these things versus just taking a pill willy-nilly, And I think that's why once you work on shifting your mindset and your habits, then it becomes easier to make these other changes like getting off prescription. So if you're someone that drinks alcohol all the time and you have a really strong attachment to it, then letting go of that is often correlated with okay, let me let go of these things and then what's next. And so that's why I work a lot with mindset, because it's not just the viewpoint on medication. It's everything else that comes with it of breaking out of the matrix or the system and being okay, you know what? I'm going to actually take back my authority on this and question if this is really good for my body, whether it's a medication, whether it's alcohol, whether it's a type of food, you know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, the other thing as well, the copper IUD, how does it work? Well, it is a toxin. That's how it works, right?
Yeah.
It stops women getting pregnant because of the toxins kill the sperm, right? That's how it works. So why would you not understand that you're actually poisoning the person that you're putting it into?
Yeah. And I did a post. One of my most popular posts was on my copper IUD story, and I posted a before and after picture of my IUD. And it's crazy. When they first inserted it, it had the bright orange copper coils. And when I got it removed, they were dark and rusted looking. And I know from the Facebook group, so many women that have gotten theirs removed and all the rings are almost gone. Where do you think that goes? It gets embedded into the uterine lining and causes more inflammation. And then people would have to get surgery to get it removed. And then there's ectopic pregnancies and all these things that you're at higher risk for. Bacterial vaginosis, infections. So it's terrible. And I would not be surprised if it gets taken off the market after all the lawsuits that are currently going on with it. And yeah, that's definitely part of my mission, is to help spread the word about that. And, I'm glad we're talking about it.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, it is a very important subject. And, one of the things that I think one of the great things about podcasts is that they're able to educate people, for those that are willing to listen. What I think has become apparent to a lot of people, sadly, probably a bit too late, over the last 4 years, is that you can't rely on mainstream education. You can't rely on mainstream journalists. Probably can't rely on most medical practitioners, unfortunately, because of, they've been trained to work in a certain way. And that certain way is to generate profit, not to ensure the best outcome for the patient. But we are getting there, and it's good that, we're having this chat today, and we are going to hopefully help to educate some people today. Now, how significant would you say diet and lifestyle changes are in healing the gut and also hormone issues? And what are some of the key changes that you often recommend? Julie, a 47-year-old who works in computer sales, came to see me complaining of lifelong irritable bowel syndrome, which included severe abdominal pain and bloating, loose and very frequent stools, along with hot flushes, menstrual brain fog, and low energy, which affected her work performance. After taking a comprehensive history, plus running some labs, I discovered that Julie had a parasite infection, which may have been causing the loose stools, a methane-producing bacterial overgrowth that was almost certainly causing the abdominal bloating and pain, a leaky gut, low levels of digestive enzymes, as well as eating too many high oxalate foods on her vegetarian diet. So Julie reduced the high oxalate foods from her diet, plus she took a broad-spectrum antimicrobial supplement to help with the parasites and the bacteria in her gut, probiotics to increase her good bacteria and help repair her gut lining. She also took prebiotics to help feed the commensal bacteria, digestive enzymes to improve her digestion, and herbs to help clear the toxic lipopolysaccharides from her system produced by the overgrowth of gram-negative bacteria. At the end of the program, Julie reported that her health had never been better. In her own words, the improvement is staggering. The abdominal pain and bloating was gone. Her stools were back to normal. Her energy was up. She no longer had brain fog or hot flashes, and her immune system had improved as she no longer suffered from frequent bugs and colds. If you're suffering like Julie was and you want to get to the root cause of your problem, you can arrange a consultation with me at bodycheck.co.uk. That's BODYCHEK. And if we're a good fit, I could help you achieve the same kind of results as Julie. Now, back to the podcast.
It's a great question. So first of all, yes, absolutely. Diet and lifestyle. That's like those are the pillars of change, and you have to have those foundations. And like I said, mindset and things like that are equally as important. But going into diet and lifestyle, I think there's so much noise going on, like you said, with other medical practitioners. And now you have a lot of coaches and people on Instagram and social media sharing advice. And people come to me and they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm so overwhelmed. Do I do keto? Do I do carnivore? Like, what's actually going to help? And I think I always say, like, you have to listen to your body, but also like learn what that means for you. And that takes time. So yes, you might have to do an elimination diet for a couple months and slowly add back food groups. So things like gluten and dairy can be really inflammatory. For me, eggs, super inflammatory. For some people, can activate your immune system a lot. So it doesn't mean you have to get rid of those things long term. But where I typically recommend starting is doing a short elimination diet for yourself, 30 days. Cut out gluten, dairy, eggs. Make sure you look at hidden sources of gluten as well, like things like dressings, soy sauce, and then, of course, alcohol. The hardest one for people, honestly, is, I think, caffeine. And if you're constantly spiking your cortisol with caffeine and you're having trouble sleeping, you're having energy crashes, cortisol makes it into your gut. And you can actually, if you have a weakened gut barrier, you can cause cortisol spikes like hours later from the same stressor. So it's really important to try to remove those stressors as much as possible. Obviously, we can't live in a world with no stress, but things like caffeine, that is an external stressor that we can remove, even if it's for a period of time while we work on those underlying root causes. So I would say start there, incorporating foods like bone broth to heal and seal the gut lining. And anytime you're healing the gut, you're healing the hormones. I always say hormones are not root cause. The gut is one of the biggest metabolizers. So things like estrogen make its way from the gut into the liver, and it has this circulation system. So the estrogen can be recirculated and turn toxic. And so if you have a weak gut barrier, then more toxins can build up in the liver, and that causes more congestion. So that's where I see a lot of estrogen dominance happening. Symptoms like PCOS symptoms and like blood sugar dysregulation. So a lot of it does come back, like I said, to the gut. And then trying to just remove versus add all these things. So remove foods that are processed, right? I know for some people, like you're like, oh, I don't eat processed foods. And then others, it's a little bit harder. But if you put your mind to something, you can do it. Like I've had clients work with me and they fill out their food logs and they have like they're eating McDonald's every day. And then we work together and they've completely transformed what they're consuming because they've realized how to create balanced meals that are good for their blood sugar, that are good for their cortisol levels and their gut. And they feel like a different person. So they don't even want to go back to those foods that were causing a lot of inflammation. So I would start there. And then, of course, alcohol is one of those things that it's like, it's not good for your liver. It's not good for your gut or your hormones. It's very estrogenic. So yes, that's where I would start.
Yeah, there's some good recommendations there. When you said, you might need to eliminate foods initially, and it's important to look for hidden foods. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I was once on a course in Norway, and it was in a hotel, and the lunch was provided with the course. And the first day we went for lunch, and the chef came out and said, "Has anyone got any food allergies?" Now this was 2013, so I guess it wasn't as a big a thing as it is today. Mm-hmm. And I was the only one that put my hand up. And I thought, that's interesting. And, and it was kind of in front of everyone. And he said, "Oh, what issue have you got?" And I said, "I just don't eat anything with gluten in it." He said, "Okay, no problem." And then as soon as I said that, 3 other people put their hand up, went, "Oh, yeah, we're gluten intolerant as well." And it's like, well, why didn't you put your hand up? Anyway, so the food comes out, and it was a burger. And the only difference, my food from everyone else, so I didn't get the bun.
Right.
So I said to the waitress, I said, "Oh, is there any flour in this burger?" And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, normally there's flour in a burger, it helps bind the meat, And she just looked at me all confused and she said, "Oh, I don't know." And I said, "Can you ask the chef?" And she said, "Okay." And she came back and she said, "Oh, yeah, there's wheat flour in the burger." I was like, "I've just spoken to the chef and said, I don't want gluten in my meal."
Wow.
And now, most people would have just assumed that was a gluten-free burger and would have just eaten it. Now, I mean, I don't, I don't have like serious, immediate reactions to it, but, even so, it's not something I would want to eat. And it kind of goes to show that you've got to ask questions. If you're trying to eliminate things from your diet, I guess that, apart from gluten and dairy, seed oils is a big thing for a lot of people as well. Mm-hmm. If you go somewhere like an Indian restaurant, good luck.
Yeah.
With the sauces. But I guess my message is it's just really important to ask questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also so I had a million food sensitivities. Like I had a whole notes app on my phone with a bunch of things, and it's really hard to go out to eat. And I also want to empower everyone to know that even if you have a lot of things that you're sensitive to, maybe you already have a list and you've already identified these things that bother your stomach and cause inflammation, all these things. But it's like food sensitivities change so often, and as you heal your immune system and your gut and regulate your nervous system, those things can go away. So as I've healed my gut, as I've learned how to regulate and manage my emotions and, have my foundational habits in place, now I can pretty much eat whatever without symptoms. And that is crazy for me to say. And so just know that even if you are in this period right now where it's a little bit more restrictive and you're like, I don't want to have to worry about this stuff, just know that eventually you're going to have more freedom and be able to eat an inflammatory food, quotations, have seed oils. Personally for me, I go out to eat, whenever I feel like it. And I will have my things that I ask for. For example, I'll be like, can I have this cooked in butter instead? If they can't, and they're maybe using seed oils, I don't stress about it because stress is going to be way worse than anything you put in your body. And, it's you have to know what your non-negotiables are. and then go from there. But I think in this world, like it can become so restrictive where you're like, I've been gluten and dairy free for 5 years, and then you still have all these symptoms. And it's like, okay, well, the gluten and the dairy isn't causing the issues. It's the underlying inflammation. So once you learn to modulate the immune system and detox properly, support your liver and your adrenals and all these different systems, then your body can handle these things and it doesn't have as much of a reaction.
Mm. Yeah, just going back to your kind of general recommendations for most people. Now, the way that I work, I work quite specifically with people, and I'm sure you do as well. But just I think you're giving general advice when you were saying, gluten, dairy, eggs can be, quite a common one for people. Would you add perhaps like nuts and seeds to that as well? Because obviously they can be quite difficult to digest for a lot of people.
I think it depends on the person, right? So I just had a client tell me like, "Oh, I just realized when I ate cashews, I got super bloated." It's like, "Okay, great. So avoid them for 30 days. We're going to continue to do what we're doing, which is healing our gut, detoxing, all these things, and then let's slowly add them back in." And that's another thing. It's like, don't just cut out things forever because you had one reaction to them. You have to see how your body is doing. Obviously, there's some things where it's like, don't go crazy. Don't eat like a bunch of fried food and be like, oh, my body can't handle it. Um, but foods like, for example, for me, cashews were really inflammatory. I noticed like really bad bloating and just like sharp cramps and things like that. And so I cut them out for like a long time. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to try them again. And I tried them and I was like completely fine. Same thing with peanuts. Like I know everyone's like, oh, peanuts have a bunch of mold in them and yada, yada. But I mean, you have to listen to what your body's telling you, and like symptoms are messengers for the body. So if you start to eat a certain food and you're like, I think this is causing me inflammation, then honor that, wait a little bit, and then try it, test it again. Eggs are another example. I used to eat one egg, like I think it was like a year ago. I would eat one egg just to test it out after being egg free for like 2 or 3 years. Had one egg, and within 5 minutes, I had diarrhea. And I was like, all right, thank you, body, for telling me where I'm at, right? And I had all these other things going on as well. But I waited another like 4 or 5 months, did my protocols and all that, tried another egg, tried 2 eggs, and I had like a little bit of breakouts, but I didn't have any gut issues. And so then I was like, all right, cool. So then I just I stopped eating it again. And then a few months later, I tried it again and I was fine. So it's just listening to the body and trusting that it can heal.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I find if I have, like, occasionally I might buy some kefir,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm okay if I have like a small amount each day, but then don't have it again for a couple of months. If I continually have it, then my skin breaks out.
Interesting.
Um, so like you were saying, you just got to listen to your body, right? That's
Yeah.
that's it's the golden rule, but I know that's a challenge for a lot of people because a lot of people find it difficult to actually tune into their own bodies. But that's something that I spend a lot of time kind of coaching people on how to do it, and eventually most people get there in my experience.
Yeah. And I think people know more than they think they do.
Mm.
And helping them correlate their symptoms with what they're currently experiencing, like what they're doing in their day to day, is like my favorite part of my job. Cause like if you can help them bring those aha moments to the surface, then they can figure it out themselves for the next time. And so, that reduces a lot of anxiety. So if you have maybe brain fog and you ate something and you had brain fog, instead of like stressing and having anxiety and you're like, oh my God, where is this coming from? It's like, okay, let me think back. Oh, I ate that thing that I know that I'm sometimes sensitive to. Thank you for that feedback. And then it just is what it is. And then you make a decision to avoid it for a period of time or whatever. So I think it's important to just, keep a journal, tune in, and also lab testing is like
Mm.
the holy grail. I
Yeah.
use it with every client, and that helps to fill in the gaps for when you're at that point where you've tried everything and you're like, I don't know what to do next. I feel like I'm wasting all this money on random supplements, and I'm eating healthy, I'm exercising, I'm doing all the things, but I'm not seeing results. Then that's a great time to invest in functional labs and really see where you're at with your gut, minerals, and looking at those real root causes. So things like heavy metals, mold, parasites, and also cortisol imbalances, nervous system dysregulation.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the things I always try and get across to people as well is if you're eliminating a food from your diet, make sure that you're choosing something to replace that with.
Yes.
Because from a psychological point of view, if you're just eliminating, it feels very restrictive. But if you're just replacing, it doesn't necessarily feel like you're losing out. So I
Yeah.
think that's a really important thing just to kind of add in there.
Yeah. I think that's a great tip. And also foods that are like rich in probiotics, like you said, sometimes if you go overboard on them, you'll notice some symptoms, but um, it's also helpful to know why you're doing what you're doing. So if you just say like reduce gluten, it'll heal your gut. You're gonna be like, all right, cool. Maybe you'll try it for a week and you'll be like, that cookie looks really good, right? But if you explain to a client, actually, here's where you're at with your gut lining. And when we eat these foods, it causes this immune response. And then blah, blah, blah. And so when they understand that, and you're like, you're in this period of healing where we want to be a little bit more strict while we heal and rebalance. And then in the future, you might be able to enjoy that cookie and not worry about it, right? And when you explain that to them, they're like, okay, I get it. Now it's easy to make that decision, right?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, one of the things I try and advise people to do as much as possible is when you're buying food, buy foods of one ingredient. And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is if you're buying an apple, the only ingredient is apple, right? Unless it's obviously covered in a peel, which that's another whole podcast.
Yeah. Haven't seen one of those yet, actually, in person, but
Right. Um, if you're eating a steak, the only ingredient is beef, hopefully. Although
yeah.
I was once in Whole Foods in California and I picked up a packet of ground beef, and for some reason, luckily I turned it over, and the second ingredient was cane sugar.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, what is that doing in beef? So
Yeah, and
again, you have to check.
yeah, Sprouts. I usually go to Sprouts when I'm in the US, and uh their chicken, I noticed the Sprouts brand of chicken, they put sunflower oil in it.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow,
that's not fun.
crazy. Yeah, so if you can, as much as possible. Now I know people are busy, people don't have a lot of time,
Yeah.
but if you can buy as much of your food that's one ingredient, lettuce, it's one ingredient, tomato, it's one ingredient, potato, it's one ingredient, and prioritize some time to actually prepare your own food. It makes it a lot easier to control what you're eating rather than saying, oh, well, I didn't have any control because I was this place or I was at that place.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
And that really goes back also to what you were saying earlier, how why mindset is so important. You've got to get that right first and really understand your why. Why do you want to be doing this? Why is it important to prepare your own food? What's your end goal?
mm,
Right. If you want to overcome a serious gut issue, understand why you want to. Like, what's that going to give you when your tummy is nice and calm and flat? How is your life going to be different? How are you going to benefit? Because that is your why, and
yeah.
that's the important thing to understand because that helps you to do the things you need to do to get that result. And if you forget your why, it's very easy to go for that cookie, right?
Yeah, and I love that we're talking about this because like I said, mindset is so important, and that's like step one. Um, when I work with clients, I have a clarity workshop, and they go through that, and they get really clear on their why. They really understand why this is why they're here, right? And sometimes it's for them. Sometimes it's so that they can be a better mom, be a better partner. They don't want to be as sick as their parents were. They watched them go down that path, and they don't want to do that. And so I think also it's helpful to work when you're working with a coach or practitioner. They can help you remind you of that reason when you're feeling like discouraged, because this is an uphill roller coaster, right? Like we're not going to be ever evolving, or we're not going to be constantly improving per se from our perspective. We might feel worse one day and the next day we feel amazing. But then over time you look back and you're like, wow, I actually haven't even thought about these symptoms in months. And you realize how much change or how far you've gotten, you know? So I think, like you said, having that why is step one, even before you go in with the lifestyle and diet changes. Like I work with mindset for a good period of time before we even dive into all that, because if your body's in a state of chronic stress, like fight or flight, you're going to shut down digestion, you're going to shut down fertility and learning. So you're not going to want to learn a bunch of information, implement all these new habits. Your body's going to feel scared. It's going to try to go back to that safe familiar with all those quote unquote bad habits. And so helping shift out of that first is really important.
Mm. Yeah, I'm actually working exactly the same way. I always start with mindset first. And that, yeah, if you can see my book over my shoulder, chapter 3 is where people start the work. That's on mindset. So even before we look at diet, we look at, gut microbiome, detoxing, all that kind of stuff. Mindset comes first, because no program, no protocol in the world is going to work if someone doesn't actually do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with things like acne, where it's so apparent, it's on your face, it affects your confidence and all these things. And it's hard to forget about it. Every time you look in the mirror, you see it, or maybe you're really trying to lose weight and that's all you can think about. And so when you're at the gym, you're just like having all these thoughts going on. And so having that vision of how you want to feel. And I mean, it's fine. We're humans. We want to look good as well. So having this vision of what we want to feel and look like can be really valuable, so that we're not brought back into that like old negative mindset.
Yeah, for sure. So what would you say are some of the common misconceptions about gut health and hormone imbalances that you frequently encounter in your practice? When 35-year-old Amanda first scheduled to see me, she'd been suffering for 19 years from severe IBS, diarrhea and fecal incontinence, along with abdominal pain and bloating. Her condition had not only made life uncomfortable for Amanda, but very inconvenient, as she had to walk 2 hours to work every day along a route that had public toilets, and she'd never been on holiday as an adult because of her condition. The only advice that several doctors and specialists had given Amanda was to take Imodium, and when she first saw me, she was taking 5 Imodium a day and wasn't getting any better. To help Amanda, I ran tests to find out what foods were right for her metabolic type, to see which foods she was sensitive to, and to assess her gut microbiome. Tests showed that Amanda had several food sensitivities and a parasite infection. Over the coming weeks, I coached Amanda to eat right of her type and to replace the foods she was sensitive to, and a protocol to deal with her parasite infection. And after 3 months, Amanda was IBS-free, and she also reported her skin was much improved and she had lost weight. And she booked a holiday for her and her husband to New York, as they'd never been on a proper honeymoon because of her IBS. And if you're suffering like Amanda was, and you want to get to the root cause of your problem, you can arrange a consultation with me at www.bodycheck.co.uk. And if we're a good fit, I could help you achieve the same kind of results as Amanda. Now, back to the podcast.
It's a good question. I think one of the biggest things, and I talk about this a lot, is when people come to me and they're like, oh, I have, like, they think their root cause is the diagnosis. They think it's SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. They think it's leaky gut. They think it's H. pylori, which is a bacterial infection. And so the truth is, those are all not root causes, candida, things like that. Those are not root causes. Those are a byproduct of underlying imbalances. And the truth is, usually it's not just one thing, right? Even if you go down the rabbit hole and you're like, okay, I think we have parasites going on. I think we have mold causing all this inflammation, Lyme disease, things like that. It's like there's a trigger for these things. But how does someone get parasites? They have a poor gut barrier. Their nervous system is off. And so it's causing all these cortisol spikes throughout the day. they become a host, right? Like you have to think about in nature, animals that are dying and they're sick, they get overgrown with things like maggots and parasites. Like it's gross, but like they are targeting the weak host. So we have to make sure our bodies are strong and resilient on all of these levels, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, in order to be resilient to stress, be resilient to these environmental toxins. And, we live in a world where we're going to be exposed to them no matter what. And it's really, how can we protect our body and our mind and our spirit, all of these things, so that we can live the best lives that we want to.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that you mentioned there really was the mind-body connection.
Mm-hmm.
How does mental and emotional health impact gut and hormonal health?
Great question. Yeah, it's everything. And we have this thing called the gut brain axis, where think about when you get nervous and you have a stomach ache. There's a connection there. If you have this stressor coming into your HPA axis, your hypothalamus, your pituitary gland, those send signals to your adrenal glands, which spike cortisol, and that makes its way to the gut, causes a fight or flight response. When cortisol goes up, your stomach acid production is going to go down. So digestion is going to be impacted. You need strong, healthy stomach acid to digest your food, absorb nutrients, have energy. And so that's number one. And then also if your body's in this stress state, you're not going to be making a baby, right? Your fertility is going to be impacted. Your mental focus is going to be impacted because your energy is going towards that stressor, that text from your partner that upset you, that car that like almost hit you, like those things. Obviously that's more serious, but like people, if issues with relationships, things like that, I see that sometimes when I'm working with a client, they're like, they put on their forms like, oh, I have relationship stress, and then I look at all their other symptoms and I'm like, they don't live on islands, right? It's all connected. So I think like knowing that your every system, your gut, your hormones, your nervous system, all these things are so interconnected, and that's why you can't just focus on healing the gut, right? You have to work on getting enough sunlight so that you can regulate your melatonin and cortisol, reduce inflammation, working on, helping remove toxins from the environment. So maybe you switch, if you're a woman, you switch to non-toxic feminine care products, and you switch out your body products that you use, cookware, things like that, that can put more stress on your gut and your liver. That affects your hormones.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, the other thing as well, if you think about it, the hormonal system and the nervous system, what are they? They're communication systems,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when we're in a state of stress, that's when our sympathetic nervous system is dominant. And that's when we release stress hormones. And then when we're relaxed and we're in a parasympathetic nervous system state, our body releases growth hormones, right? So they work, well, I was going to say pretty much in tandem. It's not pretty much, they work in tandem, right?
Yeah.
So you can't affect the nervous system without affecting the hormonal system.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think there's also this balance between, so if someone comes in and they have really low sex hormones, their estrogen's tanked, their testosterone's tanked, that's because their DHEA, which is the parent hormone of all these other hormones, that is super low. And so then if you look at their cortisol is sky high, because there's this kind of system that we want DHEA and cortisol to be in balance. And so on the other side of that, if you have really low cortisol and you have really high DHEA, and then you have really high estrogen, testosterone, progesterone's low, that can cause those estrogen dominant symptoms, PCOS type symptoms, things like that, endometriosis, painful, heavy periods, that's a lot of what I experienced. And I think like knowing that mindset of like, okay, this is actually why cortisol balancing is so important, right? It's like, it's not just feeling calmer, it's regulating every system of your body and knowing how to build these habits and systems that support that long term.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And again, it comes back really to looking at the body as a holistic system. And you've
Mm-hmm.
got to look at, not just look at diet, but you've got to look at how much stress is the person under, how much sleep are they getting, how much water are they drinking, are they drinking any alcohol, what toxins are they being exposed to, how much toxic buildup do they have in the body.
Yeah.
It frustrates me when, I do spend time on acne Facebook groups, and it's just so frustrating when all I ever hear is, oh, I took bone broth, it didn't work. Or, oh, I'm taking this drug, how long is it going to take to work? And it's like,
Yeah.
you're asking the wrong question, right? One thing isn't going to fix your whole world. You got to fix your whole world to fix your acne, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, exactly. And that's hard. Like it's hard. And I think a lot of people, like clients, when they start working with me, like I just had a client today, she was like, she just quit smoking weed. And that was huge for her. She's already feeling a lot better. And having a conversation about that was like a really good motivating factor for her to decide to do it on her own. And she's married. And so her husband still smokes every night. And it's really triggering for her to have to be around that. And I think like there's different mindsets, right, with everyone. And so when the people that you're closest with have a different mindset about substances and medications and things like that, it can be very, like I said, triggering. So I encouraged her. I was like, listen, we can't change everyone. We just have to hope that one day we will inspire them and they'll come to us and start asking questions and want to change on their own. So that's probably the hardest part when you're making all these changes and you're kind of elevating and the people around you aren't there yet. And knowing that you can still give them love and receive love, but also like if they keep bringing you down and they're not adding value to to your life, like it's okay to give yourself permission to give distance for even a period of time. And that's really hard to hear for some people.
Mm. Yeah, I completely agree. I hear things like that a lot with clients. Obviously, people come to us, they start improving their life, their symptoms start going away, they're feeling better, they start getting happier, but their partner's not ready for that,
Yeah.
right? And that often becomes the problem, and that's often what I end up coaching my clients through. And they're like, well, "What can I do?" And I said, "Well, the first thing, you can't change someone else,
Mm-hmm.
but exactly what you said, just be an inspiration to the other person." Now, it might be in some relationships that person's never going to be ready. They're never going to be open to change. And
Yeah.
then you've got a decision to make,
Mm-hmm.
right? But and oftentimes, people come to me, they've got children, and I say, well, do you want to be a role model to your children? Because your children are more likely to do what you do, not do what you tell them to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So that can be a very strong motivator for people to be the example.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that you've mentioned earlier, so you said that you work with people on a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level. Can you share what your definition of spirituality is and how spirituality integrates with physical health in your clients' protocols?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think spirituality means something different to everyone. And I think there's some people that are religious and spiritual. And I think it's about feeling connected to something outside of yourself and wanting to continue to learn and be a better person and give to others. And how you do that is, like I said, it's an individual path, but I do like to provide tools to people that allow them to tap more into themselves, into their intuition. And I believe like I believe we're all on a path and there's multiple ways to get to the same place. And it's up to us to create stillness in our daily lives. We're getting inundated with information, with other people's opinions, with social media. And so one of the practices that I love using and encouraging clients to do is meditation. And it's especially for the people the women that I work with that are type A, they're recovering perfectionists, they have a hard time slowing down, they're very ambitious. It can be really, really challenging to start a meditation practice and not feel like they're a failure at it, because it's hard at first and you're not going to be perfect. That's why it's called practice. And so helping to create a structure around that, where even if you're just sitting in silence for 10 minutes a day, that's amazing. And that might even sound like a lot for people. Maybe it's 5 minutes a day or 2 minutes a day, and build up to that and stay consistent with it, because that's when the shifts start happening. And so that is like the easiest way, I think, for you to connect more with spirituality, which is really spirit, which is within yourself, I believe. And so whatever that looks like to people, some people are more called to do journaling or breath work, things like that. I like to use a combination. I like to have multiple modalities where people can tap in. I also run women's wellness retreats that are spiritual focused. And so doing that deep inner healing work and identifying your habits, your traumas, your triggers from past experiences, so that you can learn to let go of them and create this new future reality that you want without defining yourself by your past. And I'm really lit up about this right now because I just got out of a Joe Dispenza meditation retreat last week, and he talked all about how people hold on to those same stories. I'm sick. I have this illness. I have this. I was abused. I have whatever, all this trauma from their past. And it's blocking them from creating the reality they want to, from feeling the way they want to. And especially when you've been sick for so many years, it can be really hard to imagine a life where you can actually get out of bed in the morning and you feel great and you don't rely on caffeine, right? And you don't have acne and you don't have bloating or brain fog. And that can feel like almost like a joke for some people. And so encouraging them to think outside the box and stay with that vision, even if you feel like it's getting worse, is like the most important thing. So that is where you have to believe that there's something outside of yourself that is helping you and supporting you and guiding you when you yourself can't get there.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. You're the second person I've ever heard use the term recovering perfectionist. And I'm the only person I've ever heard say that before. Fortunately for me, I realized I was a perfectionist sort of 20, 25 years ago. And I think that's something that you possibly never kind of cure completely, but you can continue working on it, or at least that's my experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
With regards to meditation, I completely agree that it's really important that we have many tools in our toolbox that, different people are going to connect to different types of meditation. It can be a seated meditation. It can be a movement meditation. It can be Tai Chi or Qigong, might be forms of yoga. It might be walking in a forest or on a beach. I found, I did for many years, I would do a guided meditation. So back in the day, it was CDs. Don't even think they exist anymore. But after 3 to 6 months, I'd kind of get bored. I thought, I need to find another one. And I went through that for a number of years. And then I went and did a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. And then about 10 years ago now. Yeah, but 10 years ago. And for me, it was like, I've got my practice now. That's it. And I've done it pretty much every day since. But I think it's important for each person to find their own style that works for them.
Yeah. How often do you meditate, or like how long do you meditate a day?
So I do half an hour every day. I mean, Vipassana, they say you should do 2 hours a day, but that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So for me, half an hour works
like
fine for me.
First thing in the morning?
First thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love
And then
that.
I do a couple of hours a week in my sauna as well. So that's kind of meditation time as well. And I go for a really long walk in nature every week as well, which is another form of meditation for me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, same. Nature is like the most healing thing. And that's why I like to do these retreats because it helps people pull themselves out of their day to day and really tune in and can be uncomfortable for people. And just like being in stillness and not having music. Like, you've ever driven without music for a period of time, like if you have a long drive or something, does it feel uncomfortable to you? Is it like, does it bring up any emotions or feelings? And so, like, sitting with that too can be really powerful. Um,
Mm.
I have a podcast as well, and I just posted an episode the other day, and she talks a lot about emotional regulation and very esoteric, like spiritual healing. She said one of the best practices is to go put yourself in a room with no electronics or anything, like a dark room, no windows, for like 5 minutes, and just sit with yourself and your thoughts and just see what happens. And for some people, that can be terrifying. Uh,
Mm.
but it sounds like super powerful. And a lot of times when you do that, that's the block. Like if you feel kind of off and like something's going on and you notice yourself like you're eating more sugar or you're drinking more or you're having all these habits or bad habits or addictions come up, then that's usually a sign that there's like something underneath that's not being addressed. And so sitting with yourself is like the easiest way to overcome that, even though it's not easy in the moment, right?
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, for those who don't know what 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat is, it's a silent meditation, or silent retreat. So you can't speak for the time that you're there. So you're there about 10 and a half days. And that that's difficult enough for most people. But also you don't eat any animal food, which for me that was for me the most difficult part of doing it.
I bet.
That was more difficult than being silent for 10 days. But I think that the advantage of doing that is you're taken away from your everyday life. Everything in your everyday life is taken away, and it kind of forces you to go silent and to look within. And again, I'm not going to say it's for everybody because it's not. But for me, that was perfect because I went in thinking this is going to be tough. Like not speaking for 10 days, and you don't get fed much either. That's kind of done on purpose as well. Like you're pretty hungry the whole time.
Wow.
You're woken at 4 a.m. So and they come around with a massive gong. There's no way you can sleep in. It's just not possible.
Please.
And I did it over New Year as well. So there was snow on the ground. It's freezing cold. You have to go into like a hut to shower and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And but I went in with the right mindset. I was mentally prepared for what was to come. And there's a big hall, so men and women are split as well. So you don't interact. So women are on one side of the camp, if you call it a camp, and men are on the other side, and you don't interact at all.
Wow.
And it was really tough, but I went in determined that I was going to see it out. And when we was in the main meditation hall, I kind of counted people. It was about 100, I think it was 180 men, 180 women.
Wow.
And by the end, about a third of people had dropped out.
Mm.
And I didn't realize, but a lot of people that were there for the second time or third time or fourth time. They were repeating. And the ones that were the first timers, like me, were at the back. And it was the back that was emptying out,
Of course.
which was interesting. But when I got to day 10, so lunchtime on day 10, they say, right, when you leave the meditation hall and you go back to your room, you are now allowed to speak, but obviously just not in the meditation hall. And I went outside the meditation hall and I thought, I quite like being silent. I don't necessarily want to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
And it was really strange. And the guy that I was sharing, funnily enough, it we were sleeping in a horse's stable. So
Jeez.
it was a horse's stable. I mean, there were beds in there,
Okay.
but it was split. There was split into two, and we didn't know each other, so we couldn't even speak for 10 days. And then obviously he came up and he started talking to me, and I got into a conversation. But it was really strange. It was a really strange feeling. It was like, I really like this silence thing. Like at the start of 10 days, I was like, oh, this is going to be tough not to talk to anyone for 10 days, especially when you're around hundreds of people, right?
Oh
Because,
yeah.
we're social animals. So to not speak is quite a challenge. And it was just the weirdest feeling that I was disappointed. I was like, I want to carry on. I want to carry on not talking to anyone. But I guess I was just in that state of, I don't know what you want to call it,
Peace.
oneness, if you like. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you weren't allowed to exercise. You weren't allowed to have books. You weren't allowed to have paper. You weren't allowed to have a pen. All you had was your own mind.
Were you inside with no windows, or could you go out in nature?
Oh yeah, we could go out. We could go for a walk. We could
Okay.
walk through the garden, and this was another really interesting observation. If you go out into nature and there's like a little bird on a tree or on the ground, and you go towards them, they fly off, right?
Yeah.
You're walking up to these birds, and they were just staying where they were. It was almost like they could sense how calm everyone was.
Yeah.
And how we were just no threat to them at all. Because even like robins, little tiny things, you think, they're really scared of humans. You could go right up to them and they just didn't bat an eyelid.
That's
And
so
yeah, very
wow.
interesting.
Did you meditate like hours a day, or were you just kind of like
Most
walking?
of most of the day you're meditating. So I think we started at 6 a.m. and we
Mhm.
finished at 9 p.m.
Like a guided one or on your own?
They were all guided,
Okay. Cool.
and they were anywhere between an hour and 2 hours each at a time. And then you'd have a break, and then you go back, and then have a break and go back.
So cool.
And then we were also given homework, which was go back to your room and meditate. It's physically demanding as well. Actually, just sitting upright is physically demanding. Just try and sit upright for 9 hours a day.
Yeah.
Your legs go numb because the blood supply gets cut off because you're sit cross-legged. So you can't feel your feet after about an hour. But that's the whole point of it. You're trying to create equanimity. So you're not seeking pleasure, but you're also acknowledging negative feelings like pain,
Mm-hmm.
but not trying to stop it, but
Yeah.
just to experience it. And the reason that is because life is full of ups and downs. And if we get too down, then life isn't enjoyable. So it's about understanding that you will have negative experiences in life, but understanding that they won't be forever.
Yeah.
So if you're meditating for 2 hours and your legs are numb for the second hour, once you get up and you walk, within a few seconds, the blood's returned back into your legs and you feel normal again.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the main lesson of Vipassana. It's called anicca, which is just to remember that nothing is permanent. So whenever you're going through a bad time, most people in the world are right now, just understand that it's not going to last forever.
Yeah. It's like haven't read the Bible, but this too shall pass. I like that
Yeah.
quote.
Yeah, it's the same thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so cool. I definitely, who knows what'll happen. I think next on my list is I want to do a week-long Joe Dispenza retreat because you're meditating similar for hours a day. But it is a little bit more social where you talk to people in between. But yeah, it's crazy the power that, I mean, we have our own pharmacy in our mind that we can produce all these chemicals. We don't need ayahuasca. We don't need these things. Those can be great for some people. Like I know that they can be very healing, but also like one of my friends at the retreat, she's done all those plant medicines and she did the retreat and she said that was the most powerful healing I've ever had in my life. And I feel what it feels like to feel like love and like gratitude and just overwhelming joy that you can't even describe. And that was literally just from sitting with yourself and tuning to what's in us, you know?
Mm. Yeah. One of the most amazing experiences I had in that respect, 2005, I was in a course. I don't know if you know Paul Chek.
Mm-mm.
No. So he's the founder of the Chek Institute, and one of the branches of courses is called holistic lifestyle coaching. So I was on one of the courses in 2005, and we were doing toning. You know what toning is? It's like
Vocal.
chanting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we were in this, it was basically a tennis center. We were on the top floor. It was like a corporate room, quite big.
Yeah.
I think it was 3 floors up. And we're all chanting. And then he said, right, all kind of huddle round. There was probably about 40 of us. And we were all chanting. And it was just like, for one moment, you just lost yourself. And it was just like everyone was just one being.
Wow.
And the sound was just, and none of us, or most of us, had never done it before. And the sound was just so beautiful. And it was just like, it was just amazing. And then there was these metal columns that went through the entire building. They start vibrating. They were resonating and making a noise as well. It was like, it was just such a surreal moment. It was just incredible.
What is was the chanting like an Om, or was it something? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like they say the first sound of the universe, right? So yeah, it's crazy. I saw a video the other day. This mom, the baby was crying, and the mom started going Om, and the baby just stops. I was like, wow, I'll try that in the future.
Awesome. Avery, this has been great chatting to you, but what's next for you?
What's next for me? I think right now I'm really focused on, I have an amazing 3-month program, and I want to get as many women in it as possible and continue to build that. And I'm always improving. I have lots of modules and practices and all that. So as I continue to get feedback, just fine tuning that. I'm going to health conferences and just trying to create the best supportive group of women that I can help heal. And that's really my focus. And then also doing women's retreats. So I have another retreat coming up the end of September in San Diego. Super excited for that. So yeah, just coaching and retreats. It's honestly a dream. I'm just very grateful to be where I'm at. So yeah.
Awesome. And where can people find you online?
So through Instagram, my handle is aligned by Avery. Avery Leigh is my name, but my handle is aligned by Avery, or alignedbyavery.com. I have a podcast called The Balanced Babe on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to send me a DM. I always check those, and would love to connect with you all.
Awesome. Avery, thank you so much. This has been really interesting and some really important information as well, I think, for women and for women's health. So yeah, just thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love this, and I could talk about this all day. So I appreciate you.
Awesome. So that's all from Avery and me for this week. But don't forget to join me same time, same place next week on the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to give the show a rating and a review, and I'll see you next time.